meditation. Accordingly, we invite Professor Chandrika Raja from Bangalore. Professor Chandrika Raja has rich corporate experience with HAL. She is associated with Sky Yoga since 1997. For the last 13 years, she is actively serving as professor in Sky System. At present, she is secretary of Bangalore Shivaji Nagar Sky Trust. Over to you, Professor. Be blessed with the divine. Professor Chandrika Raja. Ma'am, please unmute yourself. வாழ்க வளமுடன், ma'am.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
வாழ்க வையகம், வாழ்க வையகம், வாழ்க வளமுடன். The atmosphere around us is being purified by the divine power. The atmosphere around us is being purified by the divine power. The atmosphere around us is being purified by the divine power. The divine power descends upon us, and our body and soul are being purified and blessed. The divine power descends upon us, and our body and soul are being purified and blessed. The divine power descends upon us, and our body and soul are being purified and blessed. May the divine power protect us, guide us, lead us day and night, at all times, at all places, and in all our activities. Salutations to Mother, salutations to Father, and salutations to our Guru Vethathiri Maharishi. Surya Meditation. Let us start our meditation at Agna Chakra, in between the eyebrows. Surya, வாழ்க வளமுடன். By the grace of the divine, we will enjoy good health, long life, prosperity, wisdom, and peace. By the grace of the divine, we will enjoy good health, long life, prosperity, wisdom, and peace. By the grace of the divine, we will enjoy good health, long life, prosperity, wisdom, and peace. Blessings, Vethathiriyam, propounded by our Guru Vethathiri Maharishi, Valga Valamudan. World Community Service Center, Valga Valamudan. Temple of Consciousness at Aliyar, Valga Valamudan. All the meditation centers and trusts around the world, Valga Valamudan. All those who have joined us in today's meditation via Zoom, Valga Valamudan. Twofold moral principles. I, in my lifetime, will not cause any sufferings to the body or mind of any person. I will strive to remove the miseries of others to the extent possible. Valga Vayagam, Valga Vayagam, Valga Vayagam. May peace prevail in us. May peace prevail around us. May peace prevail all over the world. Gently rub your palms and fingers. Spread the energy over the face. Take a deep breath and raise your hands above the head and join your palms, and exhaling, slowly bring down your hands.
வாழ்க வையகம், வாழ்க வையகம், வாழ்க வளமுடன். Be blessed with divine. Dear all, today, 3rd April 2021, Saturday evening. After a blissful meditation with immense pleasure, I am delighted to welcome you all for today's Consciousness 360-degree 13th online program meet. Thanks Professor Chandrika Raja for conducting the blissful Duriya meditation.
Thank you.
வாழ்க வளமுடன், ma'am.
வாழ்க வளமுடன்.
Life isn't it about finding yourself? Life is about creating yourself. Vethathiri Maharishi said, the world is like a hotel. People come and go. Everyone has entry ticket and return ticket. But only that, we don't know the date of return ticket. Our thought, words, and deeds determine the date of return trip. Wow. Our Guru Vethathiri Maharishi made everyone to understand the meaning of this statement simple and easy. Now, the World Community Service Center R&D department has taken this initiative of Consciousness 360-degree, the weekly conclave. Now, let us move to the inaugural address session. On behalf of World Community Service Center R&D department, we would like to invite Dr. S.K. Sinha for inaugural address. Dr. S.K. Sinha did his BE from Bihar College of Engineering, ME and PhD from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. He served as a faculty in IISC till 1995. He has done several contributions in the field of science, like setting up a parallel computing lab for industrial drive applications, etc. Setting up an embedded system laboratory, which is one of the state-of-art training and development center in India today. His lab for market innovation is innovating products and solution for railways. He is a certified yoga teacher from the prestigious Bihar School of Yoga. He is also practicing homeopathy as hobby. Over to you, Professor.
Hari Om. Thank you very much for inviting me to this illustrious gathering. I don't know if I really qualify to be speaking to all of you, because my understanding of the topic, particularly consciousness before birth and after death, is something which, frankly speaking, I have been studying this for the last, I don't know how many years, but as on today, I must admit that I don't have a definite conclusion. Of course, I have some experiences and feelings, and from the teaching of some of the masters that I have received, I can talk about it. My one major difficulty has been the environment in which I worked, surrounded by academic people who generally believe anything only when it is experimented with, only when the experiment can be repeated in the laboratory, or if I can speak in the language of spiritual language, they like to see or weigh everything at the level of the intellect. And beyond that, going by intuition and all that is fine. You can have theories based on your intuition and hypothesis, but if you are not able to prove it, or if you are not able to convince people through experimentation, which can be repeated independently by other researchers, then you are not taken very seriously. That is an issue. And of course, we all love to talk about this, and the arguments and counter arguments go on endlessly for that. And then finally, you are looked at somebody who is a believer. I strongly contest that. I don't look at myself as a believer. I look at myself as a seeker. Always I have been. I have always questioned, even my guru whom I revered, but I questioned him. I would need answers, and my guru never chided me for asking all those silly questions. He would be very patient with me and he will answer that. So having followed that tradition, I have tried to convince people who are not exposed to the spiritual life or to the yogic life, who have never been even to an ashram, for that example. And but I have been trying. I have been talking to them. Initial days of my research, I was always trying to link the whatever spiritual aspects I had been taught by my gurus through Vedanta, especially the Upanishads, so that I would try to relate to the scientific research. I wasn't very successful, I would say, till about 10 years ago. But, something very significant has happened in the last 10 years in the area of quantum physics and rather quantum biology. And then things seem to be falling in place in which we can definitely understand or even begin to understand consciousness in the way scientists look at things in different areas. I would like to mention two names here. One is of Sir Roger Penrose. He is a wonderful scientist. In fact, he got the Nobel Prize last year in 2020 in physics for formulation of, he linked the formation of black holes with the general theory of relativity. So one half of the Nobel Prize he got for that. And then there is another medical doctor, an anesthetologist, Dr. Stuart Hamroff, who has been working on this for a very long time. And in fact, he was talking about consciousness as a medical doctor in 1980s. And then he was laughed off. People, in fact, walked out from his talks. They did not take him seriously at that time. But now he is being taken seriously. And together, Sir Roger Penrose and Dr. Stuart Hamroff have done some work, and they are talking about, they have a theory they call OR. I cannot go into detail on that. But that basically talks about understanding consciousness. And when I say understanding consciousness is not the way generally it is understood in the Western world, because Western world is finding it very difficult to distinguish between wakefulness and consciousness. But these gentlemen talk about consciousness the way we understand consciousness. So what essentially I will tell you what they are working at is basically in the brain, it is known till now that neurons communicate. Neurons send messages to each other, and that's the basis of brain functioning. these gentlemen are challenging that. They are saying that it's not at the level of neurons, but it is inside neurons. They are talking about some micro tubes inside neurons. Those tubes actually of not more than 25 nanometers in diameter. And the communication that is happening is from there. So now, as is my habit, whenever I get into such things, I start to relate it to what happens in the physical world. I take the example to convince our friends about consciousness or something beyond the body and mind, with this understanding of how we all evolve in the mother's womb. You know, it all starts with one cell. And then that cell divides into two. Then it divides, become four, and so on. And finally, trillions of cells come. What is amazing in this process is that everything starts with one cell, but finally, when there are sufficient number of cells, some cells go and decide to become our nose, some cells go and become bone, some cells go and become the hair and heart and kidney and so on. Who is guiding this? See, without any definite plan, this cannot happen. Without a definite structured approach, this cannot happen by accident, that some cells go and become my eyes and some go and become my ears. And again, I will repeat, it all started with just one cell, which means that the entire information about me was there in that one cell. The entire intelligence of how to keep breaking that cell into multiple cells, that intelligence was there. Not only the intelligence was there, that entire information and entire intelligence was being transferred or copied from one cell into the multiple cells that they formed. And each cell was complete in itself. Each cell had the complete information and complete intelligence to create me in my mother's womb. So this is what I say is a key to understanding consciousness in some way. What is there? What is that information? What is that intelligence with which I evolved in my mother's womb? I would like to say that call it intelligence or call it consciousness. That's the parameter. And this, I take some strength from this study of these gentlemen, Penrose and Stuart Hembroff, when they talk about this communication, because till their work, it was not possible to transfer that kind of a knowledge from cell to cell. So it was not understood, let me put it this way. And neuron to neuron transmission was too slow for this to happen the way actually it happens. So now things are very different. And I would say that, yes, people cannot, people are forced to look at these things or take it more seriously. And the interesting part is that this gentleman, particularly Dr. Stuart Hembroff, relates it all to our spiritual system. Indian or Eastern spiritual systems. He says that his work is inspired by our concept, Eastern concept of consciousness. And the way things are going, looks like in another 10 years or so, we may have some concrete scientific explanation. When I say scientific, I don't mean to say that what we are doing is not scientific. After all, we also experience, and whatever our gurus have said is also based on their own personal experiences. However, scientists, whether you like it or not, they like to repeat the experiments. And if I have some experience, they will not accept it unless they are able to get the same experience themselves. Right or wrong, I am not saying that. But if we have to deal with that, we have to find some way of everybody having that experience, which of course I know that with our present spiritual system, it's not possible. We need to go through a process. We need to first keep our body and mind ready to get those experiences. Nobody with the kind of impurities that normally we carry with us cannot straight away get into all that kind of practices. It may happen that some experiences come, but then that will drive the person crazy if he or she is not ready for those experiences. So they are also trying to find out. They have actually started. Maybe you may think that it is too much of audacity for a scientist to now scientifically work on what happens to consciousness or what happens to us after death. We look at it in a very, very different way. And in that, we accept it because that is a logical explanation that we find. We are able to see that in a classroom, when I see it, when as a teacher, I see it many times. My student, somebody bodily, he or she is there, but he is not there in the classroom. In the sense, it would have happened to all of us. If you recall, sometime it could be happening even now with some people, that the lecturer is saying something. Your mind, we say that our mind has gone away and we don't hear anything. After a while, when we come back, we begin to hear exactly from where we have entered at the time and whatever the lecturer is saying. Now, if we were the body, as many people still believe, then how is it possible that we did not hear? The instrument of hearing, complete instrument was there. My ears were there. They were being vibrated by the sound waves created by the speaker. That information was being communicated to the brain. So the entire process, the physical process of hearing was going on. Even then, people did not hear anything. So what is that? What is that which hears? And what is it which was not there so that it could not hear? I mean, these are the things which scientists cannot answer. But even though they have no answer, they have a problem with these arguments. And of course, I give another argument that if a person is a living person, if I get a cut on my skin, even if I don't apply a medicine, it will heal after some time. But on a dead body, if there is a cut, any amount of medicine that you put there is not going to heal that wound. So is it the medicine which heals? Is it the body that heals? Or it is something else which had started that healing process? What is that? Is it some kind of a prana that heals? Okay, if that is the prana, that is controlled by what? Which is controlling that prana? So these are the questions which make scientists very uncomfortable. They don't, of course, have the answers. But then the argument is, just because we don't have the answer doesn't mean that we will accept what we are saying, because you also are saying things which seem right, but I am not able to experiment it on myself, or I cannot replicate the experiment in the laboratory. So this is, I would say that my problem has been all through. I started at a rather young age with my spiritual journey, but I had very little time to offer to my spiritual pursuit, because the career at Indian Institute of Science has been one where you are constantly on your toes. The students demand your time. You need to publish. You need to guide research. You need to do many things, even administrative work. So that leaves very little. But in that, whatever little time I used to get, I would be doing some study on my own, some experiments of my own. And that, I think, is by Guru's grace, it brings me to such an illustrious audience today. I am really thankful for this opportunity that I have got. Normally, I speak with people who are spiritually mostly illiterate, and I don't get to say so many things which I have said. At least not assume that you will understand, the audience will understand what I am saying. But here, my audience for once is more knowledgeable than me. And that is really a great feeling today that I have. So with this, I am very happy. I would be very happy to listen to what our main speaker has to talk today, and hope to learn a few more things. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for the inaugural address. வாழ்க வளமுடன். Be blessed with the divine, sir. Now, we are moving to the session. There are but 3 events which concern man: birth, life, and death. They are unconscious of their birth, they suffer when they die, and they neglect to live. Today, we are going to know about the topic consciousness before birth and after death. To understand the finer aspects, I am very much pleased to invite our beloved senior professor, Dr. V.S. Elamurugan, to present this evening and enlighten us with his profound knowledge and wisdom. Senior Professor Dr. V.S. Elamurugan from Coimbatore. He is from a family of Sky professors. His parents are Senior Professor V. Subbu and Professor Maragadam Subbu, disciplines of our Guru. Senior Professor Dr. Elamurugan is having the blessings of our Swamiji from his childhood days and has accompanied Swamiji in many of his tours during his college days. He has a double doctorate in mechanical engineering from University of Arizona in United States and in human resources from Alagappa University, Karaikudi. He has been in various positions in his career, from an engineer in Bill, Trichy, to chief mentor of Vidya Niketan Educational Institutes, Rasipuram currently. During his travel, he has been an insurance surveyor engineer, administrative officer, school correspondent and director, professor, HOD, dean and advisor, and has associated himself with schools, colleges and many corporates. Sir has presented 16 papers on motivational topics and conducted more than 1,000 management workshops. He has given motivational and empowering speeches, addressing many corporate employees and nearly 4 lakh students. He has also visited more than 40 countries and attended many international conferences and seminars. Sir is rendering his service in World Community Service Center as a simple and humble spiritual servant and holding senior positions in Dharmaburi World Peace Trust and many educational institutes. It's a great opportunity for us to have our senior professor, Dr. V.S. Elamurugan, here today to give a speech on the topic consciousness before birth and after death. A warm welcome to you, sir, for sparing your valuable time for us. Let us now hear from our professor.
வாழ்க வையகம், வாழ்க வளமுடன். Be blessed by the divine, be blessed by the divine, and be blessed by the divine. At the outset, I am very much thankful to all the organizers for giving me this nice opportunity to go some more deep into our Swamiji's philosophy so that we gain better understanding about consciousness. I sincerely convey my pranams to my parents and to our revered Guru. May the whole world enjoy prosperity, wisdom, and peace. The manifestation, it's a poem given by our Swamiji. It moved That was the beginning. Before that, it was silent, static, infinite truth. The shimmering was life, energy, tumultuous, cradling the atoms. In the rapturous turning of the centrifugal whirl, they joined and co-joined, clashed and exploded in one volatile splendor. It was the unfolding, the massing of constellations, the suns and the stars, the manifestation of all things, animate and inanimate, the awakening of consciousness, the dance of life between birth and death. It was the communion, the commingling of spirit and flesh, the emergence of man, conscious of justice and righteousness, fulfilling himself in awareness and in service, selfless and pure. The great words are from Swami Vethathiri Maharishi. As our introductory speaker, Dr. Sinha mentioned, I am also a simple, humble, spiritual seeker. As Swamiji says, life itself is the journey of consciousness. We are all marching towards understanding it. And when we perfectly understand the consciousness, we become the consciousness. I once again seek the blessings of our revered Maharishi to share his concepts on consciousness before birth and after death. I have given a presentation. Ma'am, can it be screened or is it possible, or let me continue? Anyway, okay. I quote from the Upanishad, from the unreal to the real, and from darkness to light. Consciousness is nothing but the order of function in everything and in everywhere. The purpose of the birth of human beings with a wonderful sixth sense is to spiritually develop the consciousness, to enjoy life, and to perfect the conscious to reach the goal of realization of the self. As Dr. Sinha mentioned, if at all, if we want scientific proof for each and every experience of the human being, it is near impossible to prove any of the understanding of the self and the consciousness. Because in order to achieve such a state of consciousness, understanding and practicing to streamline the mind and discipline the deeds with constant awareness is necessary. This is called the spiritual path. But as Sir said, all of us, every one of us, amidst our normal, routine, mundane life, it is difficult for us to spend more time in the spiritual path. That is why we miss our own self, the consciousness. May the truth, that every self is a transformed state of the space. The Almighty enlighten our consciousness to its perfection so as to deal with everything properly, harmoniously, and compatibly. I want to quote one of the Swamiji's poems. It is from his book, Bliss Beyond Words, Royal Road to Liberation. He says, if consciousness is held to be separate from the God state, knowledge gets disoriented and flounders in illusion. God is the static state, which in the functioning state as objects and appearances is consciousness. I repeat, God is the static state. In the functioning state as objects and appearances is consciousness. So God is consciousness. Seers with vision clearly unraveled the mystery and described the phenomenon as the grand play of the divine. I am God, and my prowess is consciousness. I am God, and my prowess is consciousness. The moment this clarity informs your being, you have realized the purpose of your birth and arrival at the royal road to liberation. So if we understand the wordings of Swamiji, it's easy for us not only to know the meaning of his words, but also to experience the consciousness everywhere. If we want to understand the consciousness before birth and after death, we have to understand the consciousness during our life. When we live, we have to understand how the consciousness functions. Then only it is easy for us to know how was the consciousness before coming into this birth as existence, and how the consciousness is going to be after the death. Swami Vethathiri Maharishi provides logical, elegant, and conclusive answers to all the above statements, and hence assumes a very great significance. By his insight and intuitive vision, Maharishi reveals here the innate and intrinsic qualities of space. So far, neither science nor philosophy has fully realized the true potentials of space, and hence the contents of this treatise on gravity and consciousness have far-reaching implications for both the fields, science and philosophy. Three important statements I am going to share with you. I request you to keep very deep in your mind all these three statements that will help us to understand man and consciousness very clearly. Man himself is consciousness. That Sinha was beautifully mentioned about the fetus member in the mother's womb to become a very beautiful child after 9 months. How does it happen? Single cell that gets divided, and each cell has its own character, and one become eye, one become nose, one become kidney. How is it possible without consciousness? A wonderful thought that he has shared with us. Man himself is consciousness, and the seat of consciousness is the soul, the spiritual phenomenon within his body. The second important statement. Man is the mind, which is the psychic activity of the soul by the contact with the outer world through his senses. So we have seen man himself is consciousness, and now we have seen man is the mind. The third statement becomes more significant. Man is God. When he realizes the primordial state within himself, beyond the functions of the mind and the soul. All these is possible only by a spiritual practice. When we become calm through a systematic psychic practice and a regulated way of living, a mystic life of super active transcendental state of consciousness will blossom. This is very, very important. When we become calm through a systematic psychic practice and a regulated way of living, a mystic light of superactive transcendental state of consciousness will blossom. It is realized that matter or truth is one, and it is consciousness. The same in various activities becomes the soul and the mind. And I think only Swami Vethathiri Maharishi has given a very clear-cut explanation about the mind as the peripheral state of consciousness, enjoying and experiencing the physical world. I repeat, the mind is only the peripheral state of consciousness. So when the consciousness extends through the sense organs, through the thought process, and which functions in the outer world, enjoying and experiencing the physical world, we call it as mind. Then what is the soul? It is the storehouse of all the imprints of experiences gathered by the mind. This realization of consciousness, the inner vision of one's own self, can be had only through yoga, inner travel. If we understand, if we can make our functioning of the mind to come down to lowest frequency, then it is easy for us to realize consciousness. Any physical appearance in the universe has 5 dimensions, namely length, breadth, depth, character, and absolute space. Of course, length, breadth, depth, they were dealt in all the areas of understanding, whether it is engineering, whether it is medicine, whether it is psychology, whether it is parapsychology, whether it is quantum physics, whether it is metaphysics. But what is character and what is absolute space? Only enlightened souls, realized persons have given us understanding about these two. The first 3 are peripheral dimensions, and in any physical mass, they appear as volume. Now, let us examine the 4th dimension, character. Here we have to go a little deep into Swamiji's philosophy, and we have to understand every single word of Swamiji to perfectly have a knowledge about the character. A certain number of free individual energy particles which we call it as Akash. When they join together, they contribute to mass. The shadow wave particles, which are produced by the energy particles due to the friction with the surrounding static, occupy the space within the mass. These shadow wave particles transform into pressure, sound, heat, taste, and smell, thereby dissolving and becoming one with absolute space. This process of transformation results in the emergence of magnetic, electric, and chemical qualities in the mass. I think Swamiji is the only spiritual guru who has mentioned this, and he has given a very clear explanation for this. This process of transformation results in the emergence of magnetic, electric, and chemical qualities in the mass. These qualities are the fourth dimension character. It is the universal law of consciousness that any new particle coming into a mass
I repeat,
it is the universal law of consciousness that any new particle coming into mass will also get the imprints of all the characteristics already existing within the mass. Such pervasive and divine energy particles are the seat of consciousness, and the magnetic wave produced by them is a source of the six phenomena in animate life, namely pressure, sound, light, taste, smell, and mind. Circulating in all life, these energy particles and their waves are generally called life or life force. It is this life force that conditions the character of the mass. Let us now understand what is the nature of this consciousness. It is very clearly explained by Swamiji. In all inanimate objects, from the tiniest particle to the greatest star in the universe, the consciousness is functioning with the three principles: pattern, precision, and regularity. I always wonder, sometimes wonderstruck. Many times my mind goes blank when I cherish every single example given by Swamiji about the pattern, precision, regularity. This is the functional consciousness. In living beings, this develops further with perceptual ability. In this state, consciousness functions with threefold action: cognition, experience, and discrimination. Understanding the existence of any appearance or action by the contact of the mental wave through the five senses is cognition. Understanding the existence of any appearance or action by contact of the mental wave through the five senses is cognition. Feeling the consequent harmony or conflict as pain or pleasure is experience. Assessing the difference between the relationship that between the two experiences. Assessing the difference and relationship between two experiences is discrimination. This is done from every single cell up to the sixth sense human being. In man, apart from this threefold action, the faculty of realization, the consciousness, functions as mind, soul, and truth. Only by a spiritual practice, from the pattern, precision, regularity, from cognition, experience, and discrimination, we can understand mind, soul, and truth. This represents the realization of consciousness, and it is the peak goal of the sixth sense. In other words, in all human beings, consciousness further develops its character through the sixth sense, which has the faculty of realizing its own self. That is why I told you in the beginning, the man's life is a journey of consciousness. When we understand, we have to very clearly keep it in mind that the development of consciousness is character. In the primordial state, consciousness is infinite, omnipresent, and omnipotent. Total consciousness, super consciousness. In the moving state, from the tiniest part to the greatest star, they function with three principles: pattern, precision, and regularity. The functional character of consciousness in all living beings is called life in simple terminology. Only in living beings, the life force is called as soul. We have to go a little deep into Swamiji's philosophy to understand the development of consciousness that is possible only by meditation. The three stages in the functioning fields of life, we can understand them as universal life, physical life, and sensing life. The universal life is the basic energy for the other two stages. It is the energy field or the universal field. It is a supreme and divine. This is the ground for all manifestations and functions of the universe. Extension or expansion of consciousness from the energy particle to the body, to the world, to the universe, and to the truth. All these are mental functions. The Almighty, total consciousness exists and precisely functions without error in all manifestations of the universe as the eternal law of nature. Realizing the existence, function, and results of the universal magnetism and biomagnetism is the ultimate aim of all sciences in the world. Now, let us just spend a few minutes on consciousness after death. So, death may be normally of three general types: death of ordinary nature due to illness or old age, premature death by murder, suicide, or accident, and death after the perfection and purification of the soul in self-realization. we know it, so let me not spend much time on these types of deaths, right? But what happens to them? The carriers or the victims may occasionally go to trance state, or sometimes they become mentally deranged. So one of the causes for the mental illness is known as multiple personality. We call them as soul attachments. The liberation of the soul, that's the most important third category. For this complete liberation of the soul, three things are necessary. Full satisfaction with the material world, dissipation of all the imprints of sin, and realization of consciousness, that is truth. Let us keep these things in our mind, and the understanding, I am sure, will help us to go deep into our own inner self and understand consciousness by every one of ourselves. The detailed explanation can be read from all the books of Swamiji, The Journey of Consciousness, The Gravity, The Yoga for Modern Age, The Karma Yoga, and all these things. I will take 2 more slides to conclude. Consciousness is very important and valuable. Whoever is in search of consciousness, or whoever is in research on nature, must realize that it is essential to understand the value and greatness of consciousness in all functions of the universe. Swamiji says, consciousness is present everywhere and in everything. The whole universe is the product of consciousness. He asks us a very simple question. When you consider a small plant, you can understand that the processes in its growth and yield are faithfully carried out. The shape of the leaves and fruits and the chemical qualities are precisely appearing as in the mother plant. This is one sign by which we can assume the presence and role of consciousness. In the psychic functions of consciousness in the living beings, we discussed about cognition, experience, and discrimination. If we realize that, we can definitely understand that consciousness is everywhere. Swamiji mentions we take food, it is transformed into 7 tissues. Who is doing that? He asks a simple question. The food that we take is transformed into juice, blood, flesh, fat, bone, marrow, and sexual vital fluid. These transformations are taking place systematically in all the mammals, in all the other living beings. No human being can carry out even one of these transformations by his hands or by any instrument. Even the greatest scientists cannot make blood out of food. Yet all these functions are unfailingly carried out in the human body. Who performs all these wonders in the body other than consciousness? So my dear members of Sky family, the truth seekers, the spiritual aspirants, these questions are asked by Swamiji. Who performs all these wonders in the body other than consciousness? To realize the intrinsic, amazing complexity and faculty of consciousness, we should reflect on the wonderful development of a child in the womb. That's what Dr. Sinha mentioned. When an egg and sperm are conjoined, that is conception, the fetus forms as consciousness follows the principles of pattern, precision, and regularity. Who else can carry out the systematic growth and development? From a minuscule fertilized egg to a complete human being in all its differentiated yet integrated complexity and potential other than consciousness. Who else can carry out the systematic growth and development? From a minuscule fertilized egg to a complete human being in all its differentiated yet integrated complexity and potential other than consciousness. In the whole cosmos, there are innumerable stars and galaxies. Each has a certain weight, spinning speed, and its own orbit. Are there any irregularities or delays in their functions? Which mighty power is guiding all these activities other than the consciousness? Let us think about the working system of the living beings. Swamiji says there are 8 principles: physical body, life force, biomagnetism, genetic center, brain, soul, mind, and senses. Connecting the activities of all these 8 aspects and maintaining the physical and psychic functions, this complex and constant work is carried out only by the consciousness. Another wonderful activity of consciousness can be understood by considering the principle of specific gravity. For want of time, I'm just skipping some of my slides. We all know that the world today is progressing in scientific research, technology, and in providing numerous faculties that are elevating the living system of mankind. When we examine all these wonderful developments, it can be understood that all are the functions of consciousness working through the human mind and intellect. I am so much delighted to share the knowledge that is rendered by our revered Guru, Swami Vethathiri Maharishi, in understanding the consciousness before birth, during our life, and after death. There is only one thing in the universe, that is consciousness, which is otherwise known as God Almighty. And it is all pervasive and it's there everywhere. Without consciousness, nothing exists, nothing is there. All the scientific advancements, all our research at one point of time may lead to understanding the consciousness, of course not by any instrument, but only by sheer inner travel. When we keep our mind calm and quiet, when we come out of our sensual intoxications, that we become very noble, pure soul without any contamination. And when we become one with that Almighty or the consciousness, we become that and we will realize consciousness. With these few words, I conclude my speech. Once again, I thank every one of you for giving me a very nice opportunity. Every single word I shared with you is words of Swamiji. I have only read it. I always say I am his master's voice. I pray Almighty to bless all of us to realize self, to realize consciousness, and to function with awareness, making every other fellow human being and all the living beings to live happily, harmoniously, and realize their own self. I pray Almighty to bless all of you to enjoy good health, long life, enough wealth, prosperity, wisdom, and peace. வாழ்க வளமுடன். வாழ்க வளமுடன். Thank you very much.
வாழ்க வளமுடன். Be blessed by the divine. Thanks a lot for the excellent and delightful speech on the topic of before birth and after death. On behalf of all the listeners, we thank you so much for a powerful and soul-reaching speech, sir. வாழ்க வளமுடன், sir.
வாழ்க வளமுடன்.
Now we are moving to the concluding speech. On behalf of World Community Service Center R&D Department, we would like to invite Sky Senior Professor Dr. Rabindranath for concluding speech. Sky Senior Professor Dr. M.V. Rabindranath, Director, R&D Department, is serving mankind as a medical practitioners for the last 5 decades. Sir is one of the well-known personality at Coimbatore. He held several positions like Assistant Professor of Medicine, Coimbatore Medical College, Coimbatore, Secretary Association of Physicians of India, Coimbatore Branch, Secretary, Indian Medical Association, Coimbatore Branch, Director, Research and Development, World Community Service Center, Aliyar. Established Periyakadai Veedi Davamayam in the year 1982, running till date. Posts held in World Community Service Center. Yes, sir.
The concluding speech will be given by Rangasamy.
Oh, okay, sir. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Now I would like to invite Dr. V. Rangasamy from Hosur for concluding speech. வாழ்க வளமுடன். Sir, 1 second, sir. Sir, please unmute from your side. We are unmuted you.
Thank you very much, Shankari.
வாழ்க வளமுடன், sir. Yes, sir.
வாழ்க வளமுடன். Thank you, doctor. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Be blessed by the divine. Be blessed by the divine and be blessed by the divine. வாழ்க வளமுடன். It was an excellent journey with the Dr. V.S. Elamurugan. The entire, as he said right now, every word he said, I used Swamiji's, no doubt about it. In fact, I opened the book of before birth and after the death, and everything what you said is printed out and published for the benefit of the humanity. So thank you, Dr. Elamurugan sir. And before that, Dr. Sinha also started with the conception to the one cell to the multiple cells and how this body is in this birth takes place. Indeed, the great masters of spiritual truth are rare in this world, but the world is nevertheless never entirely without them. That's what happened when 1911 born Vethathiri Maharishi in the poorest of the poor family has shown to the world of this century. They are always the most beautiful flowers of human life. Keep brooding, and we are following his footsteps, and we are ever grateful to this beautiful flower. And he has given every single time when the question answers were raised in front of him, many people, ordinary as well as scientists, philosophers, doctors, have approached him. And for everybody, he has given apt answers. At some point in the journey of this existence, questions arise. Definitely, this is one of the most interesting questions ever asked by the whole humanity to great scientists, philosophers, as well as medical professionals. What is the purpose of life? Who am I? Who exactly am I? These questions arise in the minds of all persons, consciously or subconsciously. The parameters for both king and common are alike, are birth and death. Even more pronounced is the question, what is the state of life before birth and what actually becomes a life after birth? Here, Swamiji has very often given excellent narratives of, that is exactly Dr. Elamurugan has said. Life before death, man consists of four phenomena, he said, body, soul, and mind and truth. The truth is a primordial state, he said, and the mind is the result of the joint activities of the soul and the mind. Thus, the mind is mainly the body and soul. Of the two, it is the soul that is more important, he said. The body is only the instrument for the soul, and the body is an expression of the soul. The soul is not an expression of the body. The body is a physical expression and the vehicle of the soul. Where did the soul come from? Only the souls of father and mother jointly produce the soul of the child under the law of nature. Very clearly, he said the law of nature, the consciousness is the Almighty. Dr. Elamurugan very clearly has given how this pattern, precision and regularity and the order of function from the static state to this life. It's wonderful, sir. And the three combined, the ignorance and truth, the imprints of the sins and attachment of the worldly things ingrained in the souls of the father and mother take birth as their child. In other words, the soul of a child is a joint product of the souls of their parental male and female. In effect, the soul is the next birth of the father and the mother. In this way, according to the defects, impurities, and spiritual development of the soul, so child comes to the next birth. That is what Maharishi has explained. And you said, the Almighty, the God, is a consciousness, you said. Definitely. But when he becomes a man, is without any blemishes. That's also is a very important thing. And you also given, Dr. Elamurugan has very beautifully expressed, after death what happens is, how there are three types of death happens. When the intensity of the biomagnetism is reduced, the life force cannot circulate in the body and evenly properly. And the remaining life force particles gather and gradually settle in the sexual gland, which becomes overheated. And what happens is the nerves of the sexual gland are damaged, and the major portion of the sexual vital fluid is excreted via the sexual organ. As a result of the life energy for which the sexual vital fluid is a container, leaves the body and the death occurs. In this kind of natural death, the intensity of the association of the energy particle is less than the normal because of the prolonged exhaustion of the energy due to the disease. This is the way he has taken us through the wonderful journey. And there are some questions which a common man puts forward, like, you said once, there is no death. How do you explain for Maharishi? People have asked. For that, Maharishi said the body is integrated in its function. Functioning only by the life force. When the life force leaves the body, disintegration begins and every atom of the body commences in its own function away from the usual association. This can be compared to a limited stock form. He has given a great example. As an engineer and entrepreneur, I always felt that how he narrates how the automobile works, how these companies work. He was telling a wonderful example, and he gives a corporation in America is called a corporation. In India, it is known as a company. When it is dissolved by the orders of the Supreme Court, beyond when there is no appeal, the firm has ceased to exist. But the director and the partners of the shareholders and the staff continue to be alive. Each has lost its position in the association, but he continues to function in his own and on their own. And likewise, when the life force quits the structure of the body, disintegrates, that's all. And this is a way, very simply, he explains and gives apt answers. Always he tells, there is no lock in the world where there is no key. So he has always given simple answers. Likewise, our Dr. Elamurugan has given us simple concepts of mind, soul, and spirit, and how they live in simple terminology of, it is an eternal law of nature, he said. Development of consciousness in this achieved by, how this can be achieved. How this development can be achieved, he said, wonderfully explained that it can be achieved only by meditation and only by meditation. There is nothing beyond that. That is the function of the universe from the static state, from the every energy particle to the universal magnetism and biomagnetism. In this way, he has continued, they give all the importance. He also said the consciousness is important and valuable, and we must understand essential and indescribable value with all the functions of the universe. When the universe is a product of consciousness, he said. Thank you, sir, for wonderfully taking us. Every word of yours is a repetition for me as a student of Vethathiri Maharishi, the Vethathiriyam. May all in the universe be blessed by the divine. And thank you very much, sir. Thank you for the opportunity, Shankari. வாழ்க வளமுடன். Be blessed by the divine.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you.
வாழ்க வளமுடன். Very beautiful conclusion by our Sky Senior Professor, Dr. Rangasamy, sir. Thank you so much, sir. வாழ்க வளமுடன். Now we will post the link for the feedback form in the Zoom chat box. Kindly fill up this form and share your inputs to make the program better.